Welcome, and thank you for joining today's conference, California ISO Board of Governors meeting. Please note all audio connections are muted at this time to minimize background noise. And as a reminder, this conference is being recorded. With that, I'll turn the call over to Angelina Galativa. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chris. Welcome, everybody, to this November 3rd, 2021 California ISO Board of Governors meeting. We're very happy that you have joined us, and we can start with roll call.
Great. Thank you, Angelina. We'll get our official quorum. So we'll start with you, Governor Galitova.
Present.
Governor Bhagwat.
Present.
Governor Borenstein.
Present.
Governor Leslie.
Present.
And Governor Shorey.
Present.
Thank you, governors, all present, and we have a quorum. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Roger. Next item, public comments. At this time, do we have any comment from the public on items not related to today's agenda?
And as a reminder, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. Once again, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. And at this time, I don't see any comments.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next item, decision on general session minutes. Roger, back to you again.
Thank you, Chair Galitova. Need a motion to approve the September 23rd, 2021 general session minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And with that, I'll take the vote, and we'll do this as we do when we're virtual. I will do it by reading out each governor. Governor Galitova?
Aye.
Governor Bhagwat?
Aye.
Governor Borenstein?
Aye.
Governor Leslie?
Aye.
And Governor Shorey?
Aye.
Thank you, governors. The motion passes, and we will move on to the next item. Back to you, Governor Galitova.
Thank you so much. So then we have the CEO report. Elliot Mainzer.
Very much. Chair Galitova, governors, it's great to see all of you and to all our colleagues today. Appreciate the opportunity to highlight some of the key elements from my November 1st CEO report. I'm going to touch on resource adequacy and transmission planning, quick update on the EDAM development, our October 28th storage forum, and participation at the COP26 meeting. I think, as you all know, we sort of always start with our fundamental responsibilities around reliability, resource adequacy, and transmission. And I think all of us were pleased to see the heavy rains and snow a couple weeks ago. Certainly feels like summer may actually finally officially be behind us, but no rest for the weary. We now turn our attention to winter reliability. I think many of you are aware that we've been seeing quite a bit of volatility and supply uncertainty in the natural gas industry, and the CPUC recently released its October 21st winter 2021-22 Southern California reliability assessment. And there is some risk that's worth monitoring, particularly in the face of potential cold and dry conditions. And if there is an ongoing derate of the El Paso interstate pipeline, we could see some supply constraints coming into Southern California. So this is something that we are monitoring very carefully with the CPUC, with the Energy Commission. I know that LA DWP has been involved in these conversations, and it's something that we're going to be watching very carefully from both an economic and supply reliability perspective. Of course, turning to summer 2022 and beyond, we are now in the process of reviewing the CPUC's most recent proposed decision that just came out last week for summers 2022 and 2023. And I think we all know that I think the core finding there was that CPUC determined that a range of 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts of new supply and demand-side resources will help address grid reliability in the most extreme circumstances in 22 and 23. We will continue monitoring those numbers and reviewing the PD. I think probably most fundamentally, and something that I really want to continue emphasizing to the board and to all our stakeholders is that we are extremely focused on ensuring that there is sufficient transmission interconnection and network capability to connect this next big wave of clean capacity resources coming online in the next several years, particularly in the face of additional retirements of once-through cooling units and the Diablo Canyon 2 plant. And this work, of course, what we've tried to do is try to provide the best possible information we possibly can to the PUC and to the load-serving entities about where there is available transmission capacity in the system now that can be used for procurement to get clean capacity resources on the system. And, of course, that effort is paired with the ongoing work on the 2021-22 transmission planning cycle, as well as our new 20-year transmission outlook process, which will have its first set of findings in early 2022. And so, in general, this continues to be a very important focus area, trying to refine transmission planning and trying to better harmonize our transmission planning process with integrated resource planning and procurement processes and timetables in coordination with the CPUC and the CUC. And we're also holding a set of stakeholder meetings to identify practical and actionable reforms to address the major backlog of requests in our transmission queue. This is going to be really important work. It is a central focus for the ISO, transmission efficiency, transmission availability, transmission deliverability, both in-state and out-state. And was also, we did, like many others, submit some comments to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in their ANOPR on transmission planning and interconnection queue reform. And again, emphasizing the importance of proactive generation transmission planning to get ahead of the curve and to shape queuing and resource procurement. So we're going to continue to keep those messages, working with our partners across the state, many stakeholders in the state, and continue to really drive for innovation and efficiency in the transmission planning patch. As you saw also in the report, an update on our extended day-ahead market. We really appreciated the level of participation at our October 13th EDAM forum. I think we had about 600 people in participation, fabulous panel of leading CEOs from across the West expressing their interest in helping to advance the dialogue around EDAM and help position this as the next major step in West-wide market integration. We laid out, I think, a very ambitious timetable for this initiative with the market design kicking off a November 12th workshop where we will be finalizing a set of 3 teams that will be working on resource efficiency and forward showings, greenhouse gas accounting, and transmission. We're really looking forward to a very dynamic and creative and innovative and inclusive stakeholder process. We have a lot of work to do. We're going to try to finalize that design by the end of 2022. Our hope is to move into implementation testing and tariff development in 2023 and to have a first class of EDAM entities ready to onboard in early 2024. I want to make sure that folks, that is an aggressive timeline. Obviously, we're not going to sacrifice quality or market integrity or design in the name of speed, but we also know, and I think we hear this from many of our stakeholders across the West, is that there is a sense of urgency to keep moving. And I think there's also, I think this is ratified in the most recent EIM benefits, another $300 million of gross benefits in Q3. And I think the most recently released state-led study on regional market integration that the West really does perform best when we drive for affordability and rate savings across the broadest footprint possible. That's the central focus of the EDAM effort, and we're really excited to get that moving here. And so we appreciate the partnerships with all of the utilities. I will say also we're very sensitive to the fact that we have a lot of additional work going on at the ISO. So we're going to be very conscious and very thoughtful about prioritization of initiatives. We have a couple of other key projects that I think are precursors to EDAM around wheel-throughs, and enhanced the day-ahead market enhancements, and particularly imbalance reserves. We have to get all this work resourced, so we're going to have to be smart about prioritization, and we're going to have to be very pragmatic if we need to bring some additional resources into the mix to support this effort so we can keep it on schedule. But this is obviously a central focus. We've really appreciated the engagement of many of our partners from across the West, and we're really committed to moving this work forward here in the months and years ahead. So just turning briefly to another major initiative, I think as many of you know, we've experienced just really, really extraordinary growth in the amount of battery storage on the California grid here in the last year. As of early October, we had about 1,900 megawatts of lithium-ion batteries installed on our grid, and that number is set to go to about 3,000 megawatts by the end of the year. So continued growth curve. And obviously, energy storage is going to be playing a key role in bringing on clean capacity onto the CAISO grid here in the years ahead. And we're now embarking on the next major round of discussions with stakeholders about the next stages of market enhancements, pricing incentives, bidding protocols, and overall design elements that will really best align price incentives with the reliability needs of the grid and position the ISO and California more broadly to be able to integrate not just the 4-hour lithium-ion batteries, but different energy storage technologies of different durations and different chemistries. And so we held a forum on the 28th. This, again, was a really wonderfully attended event. I think we had about 700 people registered for that event virtually. Ben Hobbs of the Market Surveillance Committee did a fabulous job convening a set of really outstanding experts from across the country and the world on market design and technology innovation. I think they covered a lot of the key issues that we're going to be addressing as we work to put out a straw proposal for the next phase of storage enhancements on the CAISO grid. So we've really appreciated that partnership. This is obviously an area that we're very, very committed to success on. The partnerships with the energy storage industry have been fabulous, and we're just excited to keep evolving and making continued progress now that we've effectively completed the ESDR Phase 4 initiative, which was just approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission last week. Finally, I will just mention, very honored to have the chance early tomorrow morning, actually, at about 4 o'clock, 4:30 Pacific time, I will be participating in a really interesting panel discussion at the COP26 Climate Conference, obviously doing this virtually, but I will be part of a panel of utilities and policymakers, including Energy Secretary Granholm, to discuss the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, which was an initiative that the CAISO was a founding member with 5 other system operators from around the world who have very large concentrations of renewable energy on their systems. This consortium is designed to help shape a research agenda that will really take on the most critical technical, operational, workforce, and educational issues to help grids succeed as we drive towards a carbon-free power systems in the years ahead, and then to both harness, leverage, and then disseminate those findings across the world to other utilities and system operators as they, too, take on transformations of their systems. So the panel is a discussion entitled Unlocking Grids to Decarbonize Power Systems Globally. With the GPST consortium, I'll be particularly focused on the challenges of inverter-based resources and grid-forming technologies, and really appreciate the opportunity to represent the ISO there, and I think more broadly our many partners across the Western United States who I think are all also driving for many of the technological innovations that we're pursuing here at the ISO. So should be a great panel. I don't expect anybody to be watching that live tomorrow, but it will be recorded, and we'll make sure to get a copy of that and hope to do a good job representing. So with that, all of us here at the ISO, very busy, a lot going on this fall, just a tremendous time, and really appreciate the board support and also just the partnerships with our many stakeholders, and of course looking forward to our first joint meeting with the governing body in December as we take our next big steps on EIM and EDM as well. So thank you, and that concludes my report on.
Thank you so much, Elliot. This was an incredible report, and congratulations on the COP26 participation. It is very important to showcase California's leadership. We were a founding partner of Go15 and now of this consortium, and of course leaders on integrating renewables and showcasing how other countries can also follow California's example and introduce carbon-free technologies and integrate them into the grid as an opportunity, not necessarily always a challenge, is important in terms of messaging. Everybody looks to California as a shining example of success, and it's good that we're continuing that great tradition of educating the rest of the world on what can be done. So very, very excited, and congratulations on the storage forum. That is good too, because it dovetails into all of these initiatives as well. And our leadership, and of course EDEM, being most important in working towards a market design that's going to enable us to take that next step into regional integration and optimization of operations to achieve our common goals. And yes, so it's very exciting, and thank you. Thank you for the thorough update. Any questions from the board for our CEO?
Okay, thank you.
And talking about regional collaboration and looking forward towards the first joint meeting next time, I would like to welcome with great pleasure the EIM governing body chair, Ms. Anita Decker, to give us a report. So welcome, Chair Decker.
Well, thank you. So good afternoon and to all of you. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Western Energy and Balance Market governing body. We met on October 20th. And after a great CEO report, we had the chair of the Nevada Public Utility Commission, Haley Williamson. She is newly elected as the vice chair of the body of state regulators. She gave us an update on the BOSSR. Oregon Commissioner Letha Tawney's term had concluded, and the new chair of the BOSSR is actually the chair of the Utah Public Service Commission, Thad LeVar, so that is a change. He was on his way back to Utah after the CREPC meeting, so Commissioner Haley Williamson did the report for us, and she did a great job of also giving accolades to Commissioner Tawney for her work on the body of state regulators, in that during her tenure they secured funding from all of the states that have representation in the Western Energy and Balance Market. They were able to hire an administrator for BOSSR programs. They got into a working agreement with the Western Interstate Energy Board, and they've really increased the amount of education so that the body of state regulators are very much in tune with the things that are happening in the Western Energy and Balance Market. We also had a report out from Pam Sporberg of Portland General Electric. She's the chair of the Regional Issues Forum. They've updated their liaison sector representation, and that's available, I believe, on the website. The governing body also provided an update, high level, on the outcomes of the governing body market expert survey. The full responses, again, are on the CalISO GRC website, and we are now in the process of drafting the responsibilities and qualifications for engaging a market expert. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the board for Chair Decker? Thank you. Thank you, Anita. We look forward to the joint meeting in December.
And we are looking forward to it as well. So there is a question about whether we'll be able to meet in person. So just toss that out there.
Hope springs eternal, hopefully.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, decision on maximum import capability enhancements. Neil Miller and Jeff Billington.
Thank you very much, Chair Gavitova. Before I turn it over to Mr. Billington to walk through the presentation, I just wanted to mention up front that this decision today is the result of a stakeholder process commenced earlier this year, looking for some opportunities to further enhance our existing process for setting aside maximum import capability allocations so that they can be used in the resource adequacy program. And the goal here was to get through this process on a timely basis, that we could get tariff changes in place so that the enhanced process can be used next year for the 2023 resource adequacy process. So I want to thank you for fitting it in today, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Billington.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Glitha and board members. As indicated, I'll present the decision item on the proposed maximum import capability enhancements. Next slide, please. Maximum import capability represents a quantity in megawatt on each intertie that has been determined by the ISO to be simultaneously delivered to the aggregate of load in the ISO balancing authority area. And with this, for a load serving entity to count a resource outside of the ISO balancing authority area for resource adequacy capacity, it must have an allocation of maximum import capability to apply to the resource. The ISO tests for both deliverability of internal resources and the deliverability of imports to ensure all resource adequacy resources are simultaneously deliverable. The maximum import capability process consists of 13 steps and is conducted annually by the ISO to calculate and allocate the maximum import capability on each of the interties to the load serving entities. Next slide, please. As Mr. Miller indicated, the ISO conducted a stakeholder initiative consisting of 5 rounds of stakeholder calls with active engagement to explore the potential improvements to all aspects of the resource adequacy maximum import capability calculation, allocation, and usage. The proposed enhancements for approval have been suggested by stakeholders throughout the initiative and have their overwhelming support. Wheel-through capacity reservation was initially raised as a potential part of the scope for this initiative. However, this is now being addressed in a separate stakeholder initiative that is currently underway. Next slide, please. There are 5 components to the enhancement proposal. The first is to improve transparency within the process by making additional data publicly available. These include identifying the most up-to-date owners of all maximum import capability allocations at the branch group level and includes the total megawatt, contract person, and megawatts available for trade. In addition, it also includes the aggregate usage by branch group level after validation of each month ahead and year ahead resource adequacy showing. Next slide, please. The second component is related to the ISO making non-CPUC jurisdictional data available to the CPUC through the maximum import capability process by taking into account confidentiality concerns related to the data. The CPUC does not currently have direct visibility of non-CPUC jurisdictional load-serving entities' contractual arrangement for use in the development of the policy portfolios provided to the ISO in the annual transmission planning process. The non-CPUC jurisdictional load-serving entities have been reluctant to make this data available directly to the CPUC. Based upon non-CPUC jurisdictional maximum import capability requests, the ISO will facilitate a process to collect the relevant non-CPUC jurisdictional information and provide it to the CPUC to inform the CPUC's portfolios. Next slide. The third component is to provide stakeholders an opportunity to make requests for maximum import capability expansions. The maximum import capability is calculated annually, primarily based on historical utilization of the interties. This change allows for stakeholders with legitimate reasons to make requests for expansion of the maximum import capability. And these legitimate reasons include internal ISO load-serving entities with an existing resource adequacy import contract, owners of new transmission connecting to the ISO grid from an external balancing area, and other stakeholders that can contractually demonstrate financial commitments to serving ISO internal load. Next slide, please. The expansion requests will be submitted into the ISO's annual transmission planning process during the development of the study plan, and also the request to study a potential import capability expansion does not convey any special rights during the market scheduling, market operation, or during the annual maximum import capability allocation process for all upgrades paid for by all ISO ratepayers. Next slide. The fourth component is within step 13 of the process to give same-day priority of the unallocated remaining import capability for ISO load-saving entities with existing resource adequacy contracts. With this, requests received under step 13 will continue to be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. However, the request received from load-serving entities that have a current unaccounted for resource adequacy contract will have priority over any other request received that day. And the fifth component is to update the tariff and applicable business practice manual language with the proposed changes, along with a couple of additional clarifications consistent with current practices. Next slide. Through the stakeholder process, there was active engagement from stakeholders, and the proposals received support with caveats from the 6 stakeholder groups listed here. Most of the caveats related to details in the expansion request component of the proposal, which have been addressed in the ISO by the ISO in this final proposal. The Imperial Irrigation District still did indicate that opposes to the need for simultaneous maximum import capability, though given this, they do support the proposed enhancements. So with that, this concludes presentation on the proposed maximum import capability enhancements for approval.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff from the board at this time? O'Neill? Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm not seeing the number on the slide. It was the slide that had bullet point number 3 on it.
That'd be the maximum capability enhanced, or the...
Yes. It talks about the change allows for stakeholders with legitimate reasons to make requests, that one. I just was curious about what would be considered an illegitimate request. I tried to outline some examples of appropriate requests, and could you give me some sense of what you would think right off the bat is not appropriate?
One could be like just an external resource that doesn't have any contractual arrangements for a load-serving entity within the ISO balancing authority.
So it has to be related to serving load in the balancing authority, the ISO balancing authority.
That is correct.
Okay.
Can you go back to slide 9, please? So what does the phrase branch group level, what does that mean?
Well, branch group level is on each of the ties. It's the interties themselves, and the branch group is the specific location for that import to be scheduled on. So it's when we're using branch group level or when we say basically at the individual intertie, it's effectively the same thing.
Okay.
This is Mark Roth here. It is the group of lines that make up that intertie interface. That's what it's a term.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. There'll be opportunities for more questions later on as well. The Department of Market Monitoring comments at this time. Ryan Kurolinsky.
Yes, good afternoon. Chair Galejeva and Board of Governors. So can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, this is Ryan Kurolinsky from the Department of Market Monitoring. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a summary of DMM's views on the ISO's maximum import capability enhancements proposal. In short, DMM supports the ISO's proposed enhancements to the maximum import capability processes. Getting these processes right matters, as Mr. Billington explained. In order for an import to count as resource adequacy capacity, that import has to obtain a share of the ISO's maximum import capability. So the details of the MIC process can impact the total quantity of import resource adequacy capacity that will ultimately be available to the CAISO balancing area. And a MIC process can also impact the prices that the CAISO load-serving entities have to pay for the contracts for those imports. So it's important that the MIC process makes as much import capability available as the system can reliably support. And it's important that the load serving entities that would sign contracts for imports, it's important that they can obtain the share of import capability that they need to support their contracts. And the enhancements that the ISO is proposing they should all improve the maximum import capability framework. So we support the ISO's proposal. But we do think there are still some more enhancements that are worth further consideration by the ISO and stakeholders. So given the importance of resource adequacy imports, we have recommended that management start a second phase of this initiative. And ISO staff has indicated that it is willing to explore more changes in a future initiative. So we look forward to working on more enhancements with everyone when the ISO has the resources to get that initiative started. Thank you again for your time, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? Great, and it's good to know that there will be a continuation of this process and additional refinements implemented as necessary. At this time, we'll open up for public comment.
Once again, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And it looks like we do have a caller. Oh, looks like the caller put down their hand. Oh, okay. Okay, caller, your line is now unmuted.
Hi, this is Robbie Sankaran with Southwestern Power Group. We're developing transmission to bring in new renewables to California from New Mexico, specifically New Mexico wind energy. And we're a big supporter of this initiative. And we just want to say that we want to just commend the staff on their work on this initiative because it's very important for California to get more imports to achieve its goals. The SB 100 studies have shown that California is getting a lot more diverse resources from many places like New Mexico and Wyoming to achieve its goals. And the out-of-state wind provides diverse value in terms of offsetting the net solar peak in the early evening hours. And as Ryan and the speakers said, the load-serving entities, they have to have MICs to get RA credit. And, for example, the midterm reliability goals that were just set by the PUC require a MIC allocation for them to receive credit. And we just saw an example of one of the CCAs who issued an RFO where they said any resource that needs a MIC allocation is not eligible. Basically, they don't want any imports because they don't want to deal with the challenges of getting MIC. And so all of them are reasons why these enhancements are really important. And so we really just want to show support for them and also commend the staff for all the hard work they put into working with the stakeholders and all the various views that have come in. I also appreciate the DMM's comments. We reviewed their memo as well and agree that there's further recommendations that could be done down the road to provide further enhancements. One example is in the area of increasing transparency. With these proposals, the CAISO is going to be providing data on the unused MIC at different branch groups, basically the LSEs who hold the MIC but then don't have use for it. And so we're hopeful that that will lead to basically better utilization where the entities that need MIC can trade with them. But it remains to be seen if that will happen or not. And so even if we expand the MIC and provide that data, I guess we'll all be looking out to see if it does get utilized better or if there's ways we can incentivize that, the trading, the better utilization of it. So that's all. We just want to say thank you for your hard work on this, and we're supportive of the changes.
Thank you so much for your comments as well, and we look forward to having more access to New Mexico wind and Wyoming wind and offshore wind and all resources that can provide a more diverse portfolio for California as we decarbonize. So thank you. Any questions? Okay, any additional comments?
So at this time, there are no more comments.
If there are no additional questions, I believe we're ready for a motion.
Sorry about that. I was getting myself back on. If there's no questions, it's click the right button, make sure it's not mute or unmute, right? So, okay, if there's no more comments from the Board of Governors, we can move forward. And the motion is move that the ISO Board of Governors approve the enhancements to the maximum import capability process as described in the memorandum dated October 27, 2021, and move that the ISO Board of Governors authorizes management to make all necessary and appropriate filings with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to implement the proposed revisions, including any filings that implement the overarching initiative policy but contain discrete revisions to incorporate Commission guidance in any initial ruling on the proposed tariff amendment. Do you have a motion, please?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Severin, and I think that was Jan, that second. And
actually, we sound alike, Mary.
Yeah, sorry. That was me, Roger, Mary.
It's okay. It's not always evident. That may be a good thing. You never know, right? So your vote, Governor Bagua?
Did you say my name?
Yes.
Okay. Aye. Sorry, it's a little broke up.
I know. Governor Bornstein?
Aye.
Governor Galitova?
Aye.
Governor Leslie?
Aye.
And Governor Shorey?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, governors. The motion passes.
Thank you so much, Roger. And now moving on to another exciting topic, decision on amendment to bylaws regarding advisory committees. Roger Collington and Dan Schunkweiler.
Yes, thank you, Governor Galitova. It is exciting as we see progress in our development and our shared responsibilities and those things. And as you'll recall, Chair Decker explained at the last board meeting during her chair report from the governing body that the governing body, while it was doing its work on the GRC, had also recommended an additional bylaw change in a specific circumstance related to advisory committees. And for that, I will turn it over to Dan Schunkweiler, and I will thank him for all of his excellent work on this project. Dan?
Thank you, Roger, and good afternoon. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, as Roger mentioned, this proposed amendment to the corporate bylaws stems from the EIM governing body and its review of other proposed changes that we had to implement the Governance Review Committee's Part 2 proposal. That Part 2 proposal, which you adopted a while ago, fairly recently, recommended changes related to the delegation of authority to the EIM governing body and some related issues. The EIM governing body recommended you adopt that, and they proposed this amendment to the bylaws as a supplement to all those changes. It's a narrow addition to the provision in the corporate bylaws about advisory committees. And advisory committees are one of a couple of ways that the board can discharge its duties. You can rely on management. You can rely on outside experts or accountants. And you can rely on advisory committees, among other resources. One example of an advisory committee is the Governance Review Committee itself. So let's go on to the next slide. This is, and it's in your memo, the current text of the provision on advisory committees basically says that they may consist of non-governors or governors or a mixture, and that they don't speak for the company, but they give you recommendations. So let's go to the next slide. The proposed addition, and I'm not going to read this unless somebody wants me to, essentially says that if there is going to be an advisory committee about EIM governance or joint authority or EIM governance as it may evolve into the future, the board itself may not appoint that advisory committee. It needs the joint approval of the EIM governing body. And so that's the proposal that would apply to if you had to approve a second advisory committee, an advisory committee about EDAM. And with that, if there are any, I'd ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, and before that, let me just note that, as you probably all recall, the GRC was appointed or seated in a similar way. In fact, that although it wasn't part of the bylaws at that point, it was voluntarily decided by the governing body and the board to do joint authority when the GRC was created. And what this amendment does is that makes that for future type of more advisory committees that would be part of the bylaws and part of the actual rules.
And specifically for EIM and governance issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, can you talk about how you stakeholdered this?
Thank you. We posted a paper and held a call in which a few stakeholders participated and asked a question or two, and had a comment period. And during that comment period, one stakeholder submitted, which I believe was the Salt River Project, submitted a comment supporting the amendment, and we had no other comments and no opposition.
And I have no objection, a clarification and a question. The clarification is, will each board vote separately? And you need a 2/3 majority on each board to approve the committee?
I believe so, but I defer to Roger on that.
Yes, that would be correct. That is correct.
I found the last sentence a little ambiguous. And the other question is, so this is for final approval. Is there a process in place for how the membership is selected in the first place?
There is no process. Well, I defer if Dan knows of one. I don't believe there's a process on how you select the membership. I think that would be within the discretion of the board and the governing body in a situation of this type of advisory committee. This is much more of a higher level, adding that authority and delegating that authority essentially in the bylaws.
I assume it's flexible, that we can design a process specific to whatever instance may require an advisory committee. We may not ever select an advisory committee or stand an advisory committee, but this gives us the option to do it if we want to.
Yeah, that was my question, Angelina. What prompted this? Why the interest in creating advisory committees?
Well, there's precedent for creating the advisory committees. As to what prompted it for the governing body, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I assume they just decided to add a rider on issues where, if it deals specifically with topics that are governance and EIM related, that we would do it together with them and we would solicit their input like we did with the GRC.
Right. Basically, I imagine they're thinking about a GRC point too.
Right.
Can I ask a arithmetic question? How did we get to 2/3? Which I should have asked this earlier, which as I worked through the numbers, regardless of how many people up to 5 means all but 1.
It's correct. Governor Bornstein, 2/3 is used throughout the bylaws when a supermajority is needed. For example, I actually believe for this amendment itself, because it's an amendment to the bylaws, a 2/3 vote is required. So that would be 4 members. To give an example.
Interesting ratio to use when you have
a 5-member board.
Yeah.
But okay.
Any other questions? Comments? All right. Shall we move on to a motion? Oh,
not before we do public comment.
Well, I did say any other comments. Yes.
You did.
Yes.
Operator,
including public comment at this time.
Okay. And once again, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. And we do have a caller. Caller, your line is now unmuted. Okay, Mark Smith, if you can just unmute yourself. All right, once again, Mark Smith, I went ahead and sent you a request to be unmuted. Oh, and there you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a fat finger accident. But good afternoon to everybody.
Oh, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I have no comment. That was just an accident. I apologize.
So the whole event was a fat finger. It wasn't just muting and unmuting.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out, Roger. I appreciate that. Yes.
Well, you are an overachiever. You've done well. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. It was good to hear your voice, nevertheless. We will count this as support. Okay.
All right,
Any additional comments from the public?
There are no more comments.
I believe now we can move to a motion.
I believe so, and unless there's any further comments from the Board of Governors, let me find my handy-dandy notes here. Move that the Board of Governors approves the proposed amendment to the amended and restated bylaws as discussed in a memorandum dated October 27, 2021. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. I can second.
Ash and Angelina, thank you. Governor Bogwat, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Borenstein?
Aye.
Governor Gilitova?
Aye.
Governor Leslie?
Aye.
Governor Shorey?
Aye.
Thank you, governors. The motion passes.
Thank you so much, Roger. And if there are no additional questions, we have informational reports. Does anybody have questions on the informational reports before us at this time? Hearing no questions, no comments, going once, going twice. Okay, we can adjourn. Thank you very much for participating in the meeting. General session is now adjourned.
Thank you, Chair Glitzer. Thank you, everybody. Have a good.
That concludes our meeting. Thank you for using event services.
Thank you all.
You may now disconnect.